It's Erin,
Hey
and
guys, it's
welcome to
Tanya.
Wicked Psychotherapists.
Yeah, welcome. So this week we're veering off track from the Adam Sandler um ride, I guess, and we're kind of going towards a
Mm-hmm.
few others. We will return. This is just a detour. But we are going to be talking about a sequel of movies popular in the early 2000s. Meet the Parents, Meet the Fockers. We just thought this would have some interesting family dynamics and themes to talk about. As well as these are just pretty good movies, pretty funny. Um, so yeah, I did rewatch Meet the Parents. I've seen that a lot of times. I've seen Meet the Fockers quite a few times too, but I did not. I kind of just went through some clips. So I'm trying to. I maybe
Yeah.
have
Well, and I
to
think
kind of think of some
and I
things
think that's why we decided
for
to
a little bit
combine them
before.
because so often, like when you think of one of the movies, you think of the other, and it just kind of meshes together. So this way, we can talk about both parents and everything, and it's just makes it a little bit more, congruent or something.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we start out. We meet the main character, or one of the main characters, Greg, Ben Stiller, whose full name is Gaylord, which just does not help him out in the situations he gets in. He's a nurse, or a male nurse,
Mm-hmm.
as people keep referring to him as. But he is wanting to propose to his girlfriend. He's going to go meet the parents, and he comes to realize that her dad is a special type of character, I guess. He's very controlling, very suspicious,
Mm-hmm.
kind of trying to interrogate him from the start. And
Right.
Greg is just very much trying to please him. He's trying to just make everything good. You could tell he's very anxious, very, very eager to please
Right.
around Jack, Pam's father. And they are all preparing. The family's preparing for Pam's sister's wedding. So Greg is invited to that. So there's a lot of kind of tensions and things that are needing to be planned. A lot of family events, and Jack kind of is talking about, well, to be in the family, you have to.
Mm-hmm.
Everything stays in the family circle. You have to be in. Once you're in, you
Mafia.
can't go out. It's very
Yeah.
much like us against the world and my
Yeah.
family. He's a control freak for sure. He's got some control issues. But yeah, what was your impression of the dad, who's played by
Well, a little
Robert De Niro?
intense, and you probably as somebody coming into the family, like especially like anyone who's first gone into meeting your significant other's family member, you're very intimidated. So he really wanted to put that like, all right, I'm gonna put it on the upteen degree and belittle your profession and just really make Greg question himself too, and like feel probably even more anxious. So it's probably very intimidating having a possible, your girlfriend's father first meeting. It was not a good experience.
Yeah, he was putting him through the ringer for sure. He was like, really trying to make him put him down and
Subtly.
kind of not even
No,
so
because he would call him
passive
because he kept
ways,
calling
pretty
him a Merce,
directly.
like the male nurse Merce, and
Yeah,
just
yeah.
no,
He
and
definitely didn't respect his
didn't really
profession.
want him, dating his daughter. It's just, it just really wasn't a good thing.
Yeah, no one was good enough for his Pam. You
Mm-hmm.
can tell Pam was his kind of golden child. Not to mention the bar is set impossibly high. Here's Greg, who's seemingly
Mm-hmm.
just a very nice, caring guy, but he's an
Yeah.
anxious guy, and he makes mistakes, and that's just not acceptable to Jack.
And also
apparently.
I was
Have you
gonna say,
ever had
plus
an
if he's
experience?
comparing him
Oh,
to
sorry.
past
Go ahead.
boyfriends and everything too, it makes it really difficult.
But yeah, the past fiance that's like utterly perfect. Yeah. Yeah, and he's very much just making him feel insecure, and it's working because Greg does not have a high level of self-confidence. He kind of tends to feel like he needs to be accepted, and he just is noticing that this guy's giving him the third degree constantly. So he's just trying to pass every test, which is really funny, but at the same point, you feel you feel for the guy. But yeah, I was wondering, have you ever had an experience where you had to meet, like, maybe not your significant other now, but like any parents or friends' parents who were just really intimidating?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I know when I met my husband's parents, like his dad, I always laugh about this because his dad is very refined and just, I think when it met him, he was drinking a cognac, and I was like, I felt like such like almost like white trash, like meeting the family, because I'm just like the opposite, like not anything like that. But I do think I often wonder like if my dad was that person, like to people, like when they first meet him, because he was like a lifer Marine, just very, always still got the short and neat haircut. Just recently, I think he goes every 3 weeks instead of every 2 weeks. It's just very, and it's, he is an intimidating guy. He's like, especially when I was younger, he's like really tall. He's like 6 foot something, very in shape. He was a Marine, it's all about him. So I imagine that some people, when they first meet my dad, it was probably similar to that. Like, oh my God, who is this fellow?
Yeah. Yeah, I could definitely see that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it can be tough. I don't know that I've had an experience with that. I definitely felt with my in-laws, it was just more of an overwhelm because I was meeting a lot of his Portuguese family. Sometimes there was a language barrier. There's just a lot of them. They like to gather a lot, and there's a lot of them, lots of food, lots of, talking and stuff. So that can be just a lot at first, but
yeah,
I don't think
was just
anybody
thinking
was
too, like, because you
intimidating,
mentioned friends
really.
too. I don't know. I mean, I remember some friends' parents just meeting them for the first time and just being nervous, but I think that's just like normal. Like when you're a teenager, just meeting, like, oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't think I definitely didn't feel
Yeah.
intimidated by my husband's family. I felt welcome. I wasn't, but yeah, I do wonder how my dad was perceived by friends and family and, people when they first met him.
Yeah, military people can
Yeah, especially
definitely maybe
Marine.
just give off a vibe just because, yeah,
Yeah.
that can be intense for sure. Which we learned that Jack is, he's not coming out and saying it because it's kind of a family secret that he was a former CIA operative, and Greg starts to suspect he's still running operations, and he is. But he's kind of just, running operations on like getting
Yeah.
a honeymoon set up for his other daughter, Debbie, the one that's getting married and speaking in Thai, and also just watching Greg. So giving him the what was it,
Yeah.
the
Lie detector. Yeah.
lie
In the
detector
basement
test
or
was
wherever
just
he did
very
it. It's
intense.
just, yeah, and that's really, oh yeah,
Because in
that's right.
the trailer or the camper, it was like a built-in, like underneath something, like it kind of raised up and went. Oh, that made me so claustrophobic when I saw that. So like goes
Yeah.
into the
Like, oh,
floor
I
and
hope
then you're
I
in
have the
there
right answers.
trapped.
Otherwise, this is also where I live forever.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I think Jack did a good job of making Greg feel small, and Greg was very much just kind of, I think he started to gather confidence that even though he knew he was messing up because he was a very anxious person. So I think when you're anxious, you're gonna
Yeah.
you tend to kind of slip up
You
even
sometimes
more and
overshare
kind of
too when
watch
you're in a
yourself
state of
even more.
anxiety, or you might just not remember exactly what the truth is because it's just, oh my gosh, and plus, like you said, Greg really
Yeah.
wanted to impress Jack. And so he's probably like, oh gosh, I want to answer the right thing. But, then some of the questions he was asking were so personal and so insane.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's intense. It's like in front of other people. He's like kind of embarrassing him. Like I would definitely do some stupid things in response to that. Like, I don't like that. I either get really
Yeah.
mad or I'm just like trip up. I don't know. It definitely can make me do some silly things. And yeah, but Greg is kind of he's pretty strong
Mhm.
for staying on, I think, and kind of trying to meet his own. I think he doesn't he lose the cat, or he lets the cat out, Jinx,
Yeah.
who's like the superior cat that the dad has trained. And then he tries to he's like, "Oh man, he's gonna be mad," so he tries to get like this stray cat
He doesn't
and
know all
just
the
be like, "Oh,
tricks.
it
He's
looks
not.
like him,"
Yeah.
and or like a shelter cat. Yeah. And then the neighbor ends up coming back with Jinx, and he's like, so then it just seems like he's a liar, but
Mhm.
really it's like
Yeah.
he
He's
just
like,
was
"I can't
so
tell you the
scared
truth. You're
of what
gonna
would
kill me."
happen. Yeah. Yeah. And then, Greg just has his moments. They're playing like water volleyball. He accidentally hits the ball and it hits Pam's sister's face right before her wedding. She gets like blood all over her face, and Jack's just like, "What's wrong with you?" Like he did it intentionally, and he just does a
Yeah.
good job of like ousting him basically, because he just does not think he's good enough, and he kind of
Right.
makes it look like, oh, he did it to himself. So he's very manipulative. Um, it's like, in the CIA, he probably
Torture.
learned some
Yeah.
psychological tricks, I'm
Like
guessing. Yeah, to kind of to
mhm.
get
Yeah,
people
how
to
to
feel
manipulate the
bad.
situation and how to, yeah,
Yeah.
really overtake, whatever situation he's in and making Greg feel like really, less than, probably increase his anxiety. That's probably part of Jack's plan too. Like, how can I make him a bumbling mess or, yeah, make my daughter not want to date him?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think ultimately this is what bothers me about these movies, and maybe it's just like not so much anymore, but definitely from like the early 2000s and before, where it's like, the resolve is Jack overhears, finally Greg leaves because he's just like,
Yeah.
okay, they clearly don't want me, I'm messing
Yeah.
up. He's
They're
just
trying
like
to get the
flying
ex
home,
boyfriend involved.
whatever.
Yeah.
And Pam talks to him. Yeah, like the perfect ex-boyfriend, and Pam talks to Greg on the phone, and Jack overhears how much she really loves him and cares about him, so he wants to rectify. He's like, "Oh, I don't want
Yeah.
to hurt my daughter." And like he didn't see that all along, but he saw that in the
Yeah.
phone
He's like, I'm
call, and
sabotaging the whole
so
relationship,
he,
but
makes that right.
I don't see that in person. I just see what I want to see.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, I know it's just like a comedy and silly, but um yeah, so I think it kind of shows how much control Jack has, but also I think how much is maybe
Hmm.
kept from him as well too, because
Yeah.
he's a formidable character, right?
Well,
He's tough to be
yeah.
around,
Well,
and
and his
he's
family
kind
is
of
probably intimidated
scary.
too. They probably learned to walk on eggshells around him, so they can be perceived as the perfect daughter and like whatever role he's assigned them. They probably want him to still them as that, because he is probably just a little scary or a little intense, even at home in their little unit that he wants to protect so much.
Yeah. Yeah, and the fact that he was in the CIA, they probably had to deal with things that were like, okay, I don't know,
Hmm.
but I have to just be okay with that. And
Yeah.
so they kind of got used to that pattern, and bringing someone in is very serious to Jack, and they understand that, but at the same point, they probably feel. I think that the mom and Pam especially really feel for Greg and see that like, okay, he's a nice person. But the
Hmm.
mom kind of has just dealt with his antics for a long time, so she comes off a little passive, but kind
Yeah.
of like she will be able to get through to him sometimes. That's probably
Yeah.
how she had to
It's almost like he
manage.
has a state of
But
paranoia too. Like if you didn't
yeah,
know what his intentions are or what his background is.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's got to be tough being like, I don't know how anybody could be in a family with or be a
Yeah.
person who is like in the FBI or
Yeah.
CIA. I would just be ugh, very paranoid and very, I don't know. And plus, you couldn't. I mean, you would have
Yeah.
a whole separate life you could not share, and things you couldn't share with your partner or family, and I just That's just tough. It comes out in some way,
and a lot of
this is
people
kind of
probably
how
don't
it came
even
out in this
know
family.
too what he does for a living. So a lot of people, he probably just has to just share half of himself with them.
Yeah, like I think he says he's like a florist or something to anybody or something like that, right? Like that's his covers. He's a florist, but Greg finds that weird kind of from the start because he brings like a rare flower and
Yeah.
Jack doesn't know what it is and he's like, oh, that's weird. So he's kind of suspicious. He's on to him. So, Jack's always kind of, saying like trying to sniff people out, but he himself is carrying this big secret. So it's kind of hypocritical, but yeah, and then we go, for the next in the series Meet the Fockers, we go and meet Greg's parents and we see, I think it opens our eyes to how he is the way he is. His parents are like the complete opposite of Pam's. They're very like freewheeling and free love, and dad is former lawyer,
and it's even
stay-at-home dad.
It's even
mom's
interesting how they go there. They're all taking a road trip to the parents' house, and so Greg is again trying to really bond with the dad, and then when they pull up to the house, it's like Greg's dad is like shirtless, gardening or whatever he's doing out front. He's like, are those your parents? Because they're like dressed very loudly and they just aren't, probably what Jack is accustomed to or what Jack expects from adults.
Yeah. They're, very, very serious and, kind of always, in those interactions, it very much reflects how he is with people. He's kind of standoffish, kind of aloof, for various reasons, like we just discussed. And his mom kind of follows suit, right? But she meets the Fockers and she kind of likes the mom. She's like, hey, this is kind of nice. And she sees how much Greg's parents are actually express love to each other. They're not like afraid of that. And, the dad was a lawyer turned stay-at-home dad. So he's very emotionally aware, and she's a sex therapist. So she is very open with things. And I think that's appealing to the mom because she's lived with kind of this stifled, I don't know, contained marriage and way of looking at family with Jack for a while. But she seems kind of drawn to them, and Jack just immediately is kind of rejecting them. He's just like, no, I don't want this. I don't like this. And you can see Greg kind of being a little embarrassed about his parents and their presentation, and you can see that he very much is not knows how Jack will receive them, and that's exactly what it is, and how it might be a reflection on him. But we were talking earlier, Aaron and I, we always pregame. We were talking about how Greg, you can see from his parents why he is kind of a people pleaser, and maybe why he is anxious, because maybe he didn't have that much structure growing up, and so maybe he when there is somebody who is very authoritative, he might respond by saying, oh, I have to, kind of do whatever they tell me, because he doesn't really know how to respond to structure.
Almost like free
too well.
Parents who were very supportive to a fault. Like we were both laughing, like where they have like all the ribbons and trophies, like, and Jack is like, what? I didn't even know they made a 9th place trophy. What is this? And then the dad's like, oh no, we have more. There's 10th place and 11th place. And there's, and it's like, oh my gosh. Like, he's like, what? Why would you even display this? So that also
it's really funny to me, though.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever, do what you gotta do, but like,
it's like, oh look,
off, and it's just so proud.
He's the biggest loser, but he doesn't realize it. He's just like, I'm so proud of my boy, Jack. And that's like a good example of like the two different worlds and like the two different mindsets. It's like, and now Greg is trying to live between both worlds, like where he wants Jack's approval. It was like, Jack is probably like, we only display first place trophies or whatever it is. We're not going to display 10th or 11th place. Could probably, in having that much acceptance from your parents, you would think it'd be very freeing, but it probably does create a lot of anxiety. Greg probably never really had full, he probably never really knew exactly who he was or who he wanted to be.
Yeah, he kind of the feedback he got was
Yeah.
kind of always positive, and so if you don't get any feedback that's constructive, maybe lovingly guiding, it might give a kid a false sense of that they're, I don't know, of who they are, or maybe just kind of feel like I don't really know who I am, or maybe I can't handle things that are kind of tough, and when people do
Yeah.
criticize me or people are kind of rude to me. And I don't think that's necessarily the way Greg is. I think he's a very sensitive person and he can somewhat handle his own, but he definitely had some people pleaser
Yeah.
tendencies because he didn't really have that structure, and he had that kind of one-way feedback where it was just like, you're
Yeah.
great no matter what you do. Um and we're not, I'm not trying to put that down. If anybody else does
Mhm.
that parenting style, like, more power to you. It's just this is
Yeah,
just
we
for
don't
the
want
movie.
everyone
We're
being
not at
yelled
all
at all the
saying,
but yeah, it's
this was
yeah, you
very
want to have
exaggerated.
it'd be nice to have a little balance of both. Like
Yeah.
not to the extreme of Jack and not to the extreme of
Yeah.
the Fockers, but I mean, some people thrive in that. Some people thrive in like oh, I had the hippy dippy parent and I was like really, like look at me now. But some people it does. It creates a state of anxiety of like, well, I have
Yeah.
so much uncertainty because I don't really have a clear set path because I wasn't really encouraged to do it. It was just kind of like, oh, whatever you really want to do is fine. It's like, well, I don't know what I want to do. That's the problem.
Yeah. 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 It's kind of a, lack of, like, kids actually do crave
Mhm.
and need some guidance. They may not act like it, but
Mhm.
they need that. Otherwise it's kind you're kind
Yeah.
of leaving them alone in it. And I know people don't think of it like that. I think with Greg's parents, he was very much um loved and cared for. They just kind of put more kind of free choice and supporting your feelings as
Mhm.
maybe
No, I
the
mean it's
primary,
especially
which
because
is
the
not a
mom
bad
is a
thing, but
I don't know if she was a psychiatrist or a therapist, whatever. She was a sex therapist, but I don't. But so I'm sure she was very encouraging. Like, how are you feeling? What is this? Like and Dustin Hoffman's character seems like he was very in touch with his
yeah.
emotions and feelings too.
Yeah, for sure. He definitely was. I mean, with his little Hawaiian shirts and Tai
Yeah.
Chi or yeah, whatever he was doing, he definitely was not afraid to just be himself, which I think that's pretty cool. They both are very not afraid.
Mhm.
Greg's parents are not afraid to be themselves. They're not ashamed. Which I think is a great thing in parenting. However, they didn't seem to have a lot of boundaries. In one particular case, they were like, "Oh yeah, Greg lost his virginity to the housekeeper who was apparently like probably a lot older,"
Yeah.
and they were just like, "Cool, but we all knew about it. And we're just going to talk about it right in front of
Right.
you guys, your future in-laws." And yeah, oh, because they're Pam and Greg are getting married in this one. In case you
Spoiler.
haven't seen this, so they are planning the wedding and everything. Yeah, but yeah, so that's kind of like a lack of boundaries, lack of
Yeah.
privacy. That's gotta be kind of
Yeah,
tough growing
and then
up,
knowing
things being so
everything
open,
too.
especially if you are
Yeah.
kind of more
And
an
then
anxious child.
and also there's
Yeah,
really they probably didn't let Greg be a kid or even a teen or anything like that. There was a lot of parentification, or however you say that, like where they really let him be part of the adult roles. They're having those adult conversations with him too, and because it is a little more freeing and a little more open. But that's not always the best. It's not always the best way to parent because there aren't as many boundaries.
yeah, yeah, and I think it really depends on the kid, but it seems like Greg
Yeah.
Greg grew up knowing he was loved, but he
Yeah.
maybe has some anxiety, and like we talked about, like, people pleasing tendencies, and maybe just
Mhm.
maybe some shame
But also,
about certain
well, and
things.
that's also you don't really want that shared with
So
your possible future father-in-law, like
yeah, it's
it's
awkward.
yeah.
Especially if he's a former retired CIA agent and sees the housekeeper's child, who has an uncanny eyebrow resemblance to Ben Stiller, and he then the whole plot with Jack trying to get the DNA and the
Yeah.
truth serum to be like, is that your kid? Kind of thing. But yeah, it's just it really is a collision of two worlds of like over control versus like we're going to give just love and free structure
Yeah.
and let the child kind of choose, so it's very opposite spectrums in parenting. And even where they live, I thought that was interesting. Like Pam's parents are in New York and Greg's parents are in
Yeah.
Miami. Like they're just even in opposite coasts, and like the perception of, people that do live there, like south, like
Yeah.
down south is kind of more relaxed and up north is more kind of like uptight and and it very much fits those kind of stereotypes. Not saying that's true of everyone. That's just kind of, but yeah, it is. It's really, it's interesting to kind of see that and to get a glimpse into Greg's world and to see kind of where he comes from and that he's on his home territory. Like he maybe doesn't have to be as intimidated. He's kind of presumably since Meet the Parents kind of been able to hang out with the family more. Maybe Jack has been a little more comfortable with him, but he clearly is still always going to be suspicious because he thinks the housekeeper's kid is his and goes through like, gives him a truth serum and tries to get it and gets a DNA test, realizes ultimately it's not his kid. It's some baseball player that has the same eyebrows. But yeah. And then even the cat, Jinx, that they bring is kind of a dominating control freak, which is like, Jack's personality mirrored in the cat, and he does succeed in flushing the Fockers
Everyone
dog
just
Moses
no
down
one
the
saves poor Moses.
Yeah, he just goes swirling down. He's all blue from that yucky blue toilet chemical stuff. Yuck. Ugh. But yeah, I thought this was really interesting because it was I remember when this came out, like Meet the Parents was like 2000 and Meet the Fockers was 2004. So I was, high school and college around that time, and I remember thinking it was pretty funny, but I was like, "Oh my gosh, I would hate to be in Greg's position." I remember just feeling really bad for him because obviously I can relate as like an anxious person who's very people pleasery and yeah. I definitely can relate more to the parenting style that Greg has, but not in the same way. It wasn't like, it was a little different, but kind of less structured.
So my mom was more of a Focker. But like and then my dad was more like Jack, I guess, in the sense, just so that in a sense creates a lot of anxiety.
I could kind of see that.
Like for a child, for someone growing up, it's like, how am I supposed to act? Like, am I supposed to be relaxed with this parent, or am I supposed to be, show no emotion? So it's that's hard. Yeah,
I think my dad was kind of more like Jack, kind of, but I didn't live with him very often, and he, he would go back and forth with things because of the, issues that he had, and so I don't know, but he did have moments of that, so I don't know. I guess I'm just speaking more in terms of like my mom mostly.
So she's a little more
my mom did
free.
raise us, and so I think she just didn't really. She was always working, she just didn't really have any time to like regulate that stuff, and so she was very busy. But that can create a lot of anxiety, and I'm not blaming my mom. Did the best that she could do, and that was a lot. It was
a lot of kids,
5 kids, so that's a lot. But she just worked, she had to work a lot, and she couldn't really like set up things for us, and that I remember I was a child who craved like structure and discipline, but I didn't have the words, and we just didn't have the resources. We didn't have, just wasn't there.
I think I've talked about it in the past. Like, it's like, I feel like being the youngest, I often got the short shaft of that, because like I feel like my siblings, especially my older ones, were always in the structured sports and structured activities and different things, and then it's just like I had to sign myself up for like chorus in elementary school and middle school, because I wanted to do something. But I never was in any sports or never in anything. I don't know. I do have resentment for that. But I do wish that they would have been like, okay, because my mom got very loosey-goosey, and she always was, but she got more so with, when it was me. I think she was just done parenting. Yeah. Yeah, she's like,
Yeah. By the time she got to the
yeah.
end,
So, and
I
that's
mean,
what
it's gotta
my
be
one of my
exhausting,
brothers
you
always
know?
jokes and says, yeah, by the time you came, mom was, she was just kind of done having kids. I'm like, oh, great. That's really awesome to hear. But
I
yeah,
think that's the
yeah.
plight of the youngest when you have a large family. Yeah, it
Mhm.
really is. I
Yeah.
mean, at least maybe in that time that we're speaking on our time. I don't know about now if it's changed. I don't know, but yeah, for sure. It definitely is. And it's kind of it makes for again, I know we talked about this last week, but it doesn't fit that pop psychology model where we got everything
Yeah.
and we got baby. That's not at all what it is. And not having somebody check in on you is not
Yeah.
a great thing. It's not a fun thing. And not having that feeling
Yeah.
like you have like something to that's a very
Mhm.
for me it was a
Yeah. Well,
very scary, nerve-wracking,
just even little
anxiety-ridden
things
thing.
like,
I
hey, is
did not
anyone
like
making
it.
sure I'm doing my homework, or is anyone checking to see that I walked home okay from elementary school? Like just like little things, because it's just like, whatever, she's
Yeah.
working
Yeah.
or they're working and it's just kind of free. But yeah, it is kind of like and then you having like adult conversations with you as a teenager or a young adult, young kid, not a young adult, like you're a young adult. You feel like you're a young adult because you're having these conversations with your mom. Like that's, I felt like there wasn't really the boundaries, which it seems like with Greg's family. Like they just kind of were like, oh, we'll just talk about anything freely with Greg his whole life. And that's how I felt like with my mom after a certain age. It's just like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, okay, this is weird.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't have that with my mom.
Yeah.
I kinda had that with just because I had older siblings
Yeah.
and they just probably were
Yeah.
doing their
Yeah.
thing and
Yeah.
I heard it,
Not
kinda
total.
thing.
It's not
But
like
yeah, no, for
X-rated
sure,
stuff, but
yeah.
just like stuff that you don't want to hear, like, which as a kid you shouldn't really know about, just different things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I for my mom, it was inadvertently,
Yeah. Yeah.
just
You
because of the
overhear
setup
stuff.
of our house, just yeah, a lot of things. But yeah, but um, yeah, it's tough. I mean, I guess what we're saying is, and I know we keep coming back to this, but we're gonna say it again. The
Yes.
youngest does
Yes.
not have it
So,
easy in a large family. And I'm not saying that this is not true for other
yeah.
people. Like I think no
Yeah.
kid has it easy in a large group of,
Yeah.
maybe just
Yeah.
in general,
So
just
those
being a
of you
kid is tough, okay?
youngest,
And being an
reach
adult.
out to us. We
I don't know.
understand. It's not always, you're not always the princess and spoiled as it is
Yes.
in the movies.
No. In fact, I very rarely know that at all. I don't know. My mom was the youngest of 5 and she described herself
Oh,
as like she felt like she was kind of spoiled
yeah.
and everything, but I don't know if I even
Yeah.
see that. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's maybe just what
I
she was
think my
told
mom
that
was
she
the
was.
second
I don't
oldest
know.
of 6. So she had the opposite, where she had to be the babysitter and do all, just like, so she had resentment of kind of losing her adolescence and stuff when everyone, like when all of a sudden she had to take care of people. And then she got married young and
Yeah.
kids young, but yeah, it's just kind of,
Yeah, for sure. That can definitely I can totally see that. And I validate that. I think that is very tough because I think that does happen to a lot of older siblings.
yeah.
And I could see it with mine as well too, but um
Yeah.
it's hard down the line. It's there's not like I did not feel like, "Oh my
Yeah.
god, everyone is just
Yeah.
doing
It was
everything
not
for
the
me and
Brady
everything's
Bunch,
all about
because
like it
because people always
was
like, oh, look
not
at
that
Cindy and
way."
Bobby. They're so spoiled.
No.
But
Yeah. Yeah. I also think there's a, because I had a little bit of a separation like between my 2 oldest sisters and then I have twin sisters right above me that are really like
okay.
only a year and a half older, not even a year and a half older than me. So we're in like quick succession. So there's kind of a little bit of a division in that. And I think my older 2 sisters saw differences in that because my dad was probably living with them more
Yeah.
when they were growing up,
Yeah.
whereas my dad was out of the house when I was like 6 and
Yeah.
I only kind of knew him in a certain way
Mhm.
that he maybe wasn't back then. And I think sometimes it was said that, because of not having like a structure, which I so wanted, and a lot of kids, they need it. That, my sisters and I were spoiled, and I just
Yeah.
keep saying, like, that's just so wrong because we were like not looked
Yeah.
we kind of were just like free falling a lot, we kind of just had each other. And again, I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not saying anything about that. I'm just trying to say that was my experience of it. And I think they can
Mhm.
maybe misperceive that and forget all the things that
Well, and
they
it
got,
yeah.
and
Well, and
that
it
it's
is a
not a
different
good
childhood
thing
because my
necessarily.
oldest is 10 years apart from me, and then the next is, I think, 7 or so, and so, but it is a different childhood from, like, from even even looking at the
Yeah.
pictures of them, I'm like, totally different because they had my parents were in a different state of mind, and just, yeah, it's just different.
Yeah. But there's pros and cons, and I've tried to talk about this. I know with at certain points, I don't know if anybody really takes my point of view into account, but I have said, I do think
Mhm.
both had pros and cons. I
Right.
wasn't there for the first part, but
Right.
that probably had its rough points, I would imagine. But not having, like, you know, rules and stuff like that, and having, like, nothing and kind of nothing looked after in
Mhm.
that department at certain points is not
Right.
that's not
Yeah.
being spoiled. There's a That's a really odd. I never understood that. I was always like, I don't know. I just always felt like when that would be said, I was just like, I feel so bad.
Yeah.
Nobody can say, like, I couldn't put it into words, but I was like, why is it was like a
Mhm.
re
Yeah.
wounding. I was like, why? Like, why am I being blamed for this? I don't get it. It just, yeah, family dynamics are weird. I'm sorry.
But
That
we're
was a
talking about
total we went
families.
off
We're
the
talking about
rails there,
different types
but
of families, and so it's all related.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. It's strange. But families are weird. That's our you know
They
what?
are. They
Families
are.
are weird. That's our
And
our
Meet the
assessment.
Fockers and Meet the
So
Parents they definitely showcase different styles, and just even how people, spouses interact with each other, and then the kids are based on that too. It's different. They are weird.
yeah, yeah, they really are. So
That's
that's our
our
assessment, people.
that's the Wicked Psychotherapist
So
rundown is, yeah.
yeah, that's our analysis. But yeah, so I wanted to
Okay, I
ask
like these.
our fun question, which is, I was going to ask about, like, which parenting style you'd like more to have had, but I think I'd rather ask, where would you have liked to have grown up, in New York or Miami?
Well, you know how I feel about New York. So, but I guess, when would I be growing up in Miami? If it's Miami in the 80s or 70s, maybe. I don't know. But I guess, of those choices, I might choose New York, but maybe more upstate New York, not the city, not Manhattan. I always have these rules, right? Like, so maybe where it's a little more woodsy, maybe almost Canada, New York. That's what I Yeah,
Yeah,
so
like
I
that
choose New
really,
York,
yeah,
but
really
like upstate
upstate.
New York.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I would choose New York as well too. I'm not a fan of the heat. And I just like, I don't know. I feel like maybe I would have felt more attuned
Yeah.
to the city if I had been there. Like, I wouldn't have loved now who I am, but maybe
Yeah.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
think maybe
I
I
mean, yeah,
could have gotten accustomed to it or
my mom grew
something.
up
I don't
in,
know.
like,
So
the
I would choose New
Bronx and
York.
Yonkers, and she loved it, and she loved the city, and she thrived on it, and all her jobs, like, growing up, she always would pick a city location, no matter, because she just felt more connected in the city. And so, I mean, I did appreciate when I'd go there, and I liked it, and I've liked Manhattan, when I've gone and stuff, but I don't know. I guess, from different family and different things, it just has really made me not like New York. It's not, sorry, New York. It's just, yeah, it's just based on some
I understand that.
situations and people. It's not so I probably don't hate the whole state. I just hate a lot of it.
I was not
Yeah.
expecting that. I thought you were going to say something else. That's funny. Yeah, no, I understand. I love the things that you have access to in the city, but crowded
Yeah.
places where there's lots of people, I don't love. I
Yeah, it's
do
very
like a lot of
pretty.
upstate New York. I do
Yeah.
think it's very, very nice. Yeah. And there's a lot of
Or
cool
by the
things there,
beach,
but
like, like part of,
um
like Long Island
tough.
looks really pretty. But again, that's so far from everything. It would be hard to live
Yeah.
there. Like it'd be unless you're really rich.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing. It's pretty expensive. Well, in both
Yeah,
cities, it's
yeah.
pretty expensive. Miami's very
Yeah, I
expensive
don't think I'd want
too.
to live in Miami. I've only
No.
been to Miami once, and I was driving through to go to Key West. And just the way people drove and stuff, it was just really, really intimidating. It was worse than Boston. I was just like,
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. It's a city that I think is
yeah, no,
it's
it's
not my
in it. And I
style.
heard
I'm
it's
just
just
gonna
like
say
people are
that. I
driving
don't
worse
know.
and crazier and crazier. So, yeah. I'm 90, in case any of the viewers didn't
Yeah.
realize.
That's the way we operate. I have a license plate that says Golden Girls on the
Yeah,
back of mine, and
yeah,
I'm not joking. So,
yeah,
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 we enjoy the older
yeah. I
vibe,
prefer, yeah.
older
I
lifestyle,
prefer Naples. Like, isn't
but
that where the Golden Girls
that's
lived or
just
something?
us.
Like, just, oh, did they?
They lived in Miami. They did live in Miami, but it was like
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
a,
It was like 80s
just
Miami
suburban
too. A
part,
little bit different.
you know. Yeah.
Yeah, retirement
There's
community.
also just made up, so yeah. The actual house where they shot the outside of
Really?
is actually in California. Yeah, the outside of it. And I'm sad that I know that, but I do. But yeah, so yeah, let us know what you think. This was definitely different from
Mm-hmm.
Adam. Don't worry, we will come back. We will come back. We're not leaving them. Let us know your thoughts and feelings, anything you want to add, anything you want us to know, anything outside of this. We love hearing from you. We are on all socials. Tell a friend, write us a
Yeah.
review.
Yeah, share.
5 stars,
Yeah.
please. Only. That'd be great. But yeah.
And keep your
don't
mind
forget,
well. We'll
stay
talk to you
wicked.
next week. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye guys.
Did it stop? I think it stopped.